Hey gang, I had some issues with my mic on this episode, so I apologize for the sound. I hope you guys can still enjoy the show. And thank you to Patreon for helping me to buy a new microphone. Now, it looks like I just need to learn how to use it, eh?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast with Dave Crosland. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming is brought to you by evalbloodanalysis.com. You can get your lab work done by Dave if you're in the UK. You can get Dave to look at your labs and tell you all about them and tell you what you need to do to keep yourself healthy. We're also brought to you by Strom Sports Nutrition. For those of you in the UK, they have great health and performance supplements. They've got health stacks, especially for you guys on the cycle. Check out their cycle support. We're also brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there for high-quality third-party tested supplements, the first company to ever support our programming. And we're brought to you by SupplementSource.ca for Canadians. They have great deals that change week to week. And last but not least, we're brought to you by you, the people of Patreon. And we have a Patreon question today. Plus, we've got your listener questions. You guys are welcome to comment in the stream here live, or you're welcome to comment on the YouTube page. That's the best place to get your questions on the show. Plus, likes, comments, all that stuff. It helps to boost us in the algorithm. Dave, people surprisingly were in favor of Tbol. Well, at least the people that were in favor of Tbol all spoke up on our last episode. They like oral Turinabol. Some of them do.
It's a good little drug. Highly underrated, I believe. But it's just not readily available, and I think that's half the problem. You know, when people get it, they're not necessarily getting it, so they never experience what it actually can do. But it's not a sledgehammer either. You know, it's definitely going to work better for those guys that are already very much on point with the training.
Yeah, that's what I can see. Cornelius Parkin spoke up. He was like, hey, 10 milligrams of Tbol pre-workout he said he finds it to be an awesome pre-workout compound.
I haven't spoken to Con in ages.
He watches the show all the time. He hangs out with us. He's a good bodybuilder, too.
Well, I believe he's very downsized now, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think he is the size he used to be. I think. I mean, I think he used to be pretty massive.
Yeah, he was quite big. Yeah, he was quite big.
But we can only do that for so long, unfortunately.
Very true.
Though we did have a listener say that he's been blasting gear for his entire life, I think he said. And he was like, I don't have any health problems. What are you guys talking about? Steroids are bad for you. Did you see that comment?
The German gentleman, I did, yes.
It's like, okay, yeah, keep crack on. That's what I have to say to him, Dave.
Each to their own.
Yeah, so listen, we've got some listener questions. In fact, we do have like a good dozen of them. So I figured we could just jump in and run with it from there. You have any experience with Injectable Yohimbine? Yeah, he says, a question for the show if you see fit, Scott. I know it's a certain site, the amino site carries Injectable Yohimbine. Any chance in dosage he says, any change in doses from the oral version? Also, do you take it sub-Q, injection site dependent? Thanks. Have you used Helios, which is a combination of Clen Yohimbine? No?
No, I've never used Yohimbine in any form.
Really?
I would suspect that if your dosing's probably going to be slightly less on the injectable. Someone says that my microphone's not working right.
Yeah, it sounds quiet. You're back like this. So
all right, so is this better?
Oh my god, dude, that is so much freaking better. And you're going to cost me so much time in editing to make that first part sound even remotely okay. So there's that.
Earn your money, you lazy sod.
It is so much better. You sound like a different man. You sound like somebody who would be narrating books with a British accent now. Like, you sound good, all right?
So Billy went to the park with Spot. It was a nice day. They decided to play on the swings.
Exactly. What a lovely day to go to the park. Yeah, so I've never used intentionally. I've never been like, okay, we're cutting. We need to get some Helios. Helios is generally some amount of Clen with some amount of Yohimbine. Maybe 50 micrograms of Clen with maybe 4 milligrams of Yohimbine. I've seen it around that ballpark. It's said to have local effect.
Okay.
I know Yohimbine can have local effect, but the reality is, I don't care what you do with it. Once you inject it, it's going systemic. So if somebody happens to have Helios and they want to use it, we'll dose it the way we'll dose it as part of our Clen dose, basically. That's what I would do. I would say start with, whatever, half mil, and you rotate it around. I don't know whether you're going to have a local effect, but I would still want to rotate it around sub-Q to make sure that it is kind of getting spread across the surface area of a local spot that maybe is resistant to fat loss, like lower belly or love handle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing I would say is he was asking about dosing in comparison to oral. I would suspect that the injectable would need to be slightly lower, just because of better delivery. But other than that, it's not a compound I have any experience with whatsoever.
Yeah, and let us know, guys. Is Dave's mic better now? Anyway,
well, I can't get any closer. It's going to be up my bloody nostrils.
It sounds good. It sounds good now. I'll say too. So Scott Stevenson put it like this: that if in your fat loss arsenal, Clen is putting your foot on the gas of fat loss, Yohimbine is taking your foot off the brake. I like that analogy.
Okay.
So it kind of allows the Clen, or allows you to continue getting what you want out of it. Mm-hmm. So I found oral Yohimbine. I can't remember what the dosing is per kilogram. They have I think it might be something like 2 milligrams per, I can't remember, but 20 milligrams ends up being the very high end dose. I never really have people use more than 10 milligrams oral Yohimbine, and it usually is in conjunction with Clen. You can't go higher than that. People get side effects with it. Man, I'm surprised you've never used it. It's in every, or had people use it, it's in every over-the-counter fat burner that used to be popular in the early 2000s.
Never used fat burners?
No. Yeah, I think I tried several of them, like Lipo 6 and stuff like that, back when I was a kid.
I've never used fat burners. A little bit of a play. Well, sorry, that's a lie. I have, but not sustained or in any actual plan.
Yeah.
I think I played around with it for about 2 weeks once.
All right. We had another Clen question somewhere. I'll get to that later. What about this guy? He said, I got a question for Test. He says, if Test can make you sleepy, he says, I'm on 500 milligrams at Test E, and I'm feeling sleepy, like never before. First, I thought it was the carbs because I'm bulking, but even with reduced carbs, I still feel the same. Big thanks.
Could be a combination of everything. Carbs, estrogen, high test, blood thickening. There could be a few things going on. He hasn't mentioned any estrogen management, so I don't know if he's running any. If he's not, he's probably going to need some at 500, or even some sort of dose.
Yeah.
But the other thing would be blood thickness as well. So I'd get his FBC check, I'd get his estrogen checked, and I'd see where everything is sitting.
Yeah. Blood pressure, maybe. Check that too. It's real quick.
Yeah.
I keep a blood pressure machine right here at my desk, Dave.
Why is your desk prone to high blood pressure?
Yes, my desk is prone. Actually,
probably with having to work with you.
Put this right here. Test that when I'm done talking to Dave. I'm doing an experiment. See if my blood pressure goes up when I podcast.
See how much I raise it.
Yeah.
Well, if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you I raise it a lot.
What about this one from ZR? Let's see if I can put this on the screen. Yes, I can show this on stream. What's the highest you guys would push T3 Clen cardio for a client who is behind and needs to push hard for a few weeks on prep?
I think this is very personal, depending on where you are. You know, if you're only running sort of 0.2 or 0.4 Clen, then going up to 8 is going to have a significant impact. The highest I've sort of, well, I think 1.2 of Clen is an extreme dose, and I wouldn't see any benefit to going above that. But I know a few people that will go that high when they're behind and struggling a little bit. But yeah, so T3, again, I probably wouldn't go over 50 as a very max dose. I think when you start going above those doses on either of those drugs, it becomes counterproductive. Not in the sense of fat loss, but in the sense of causing other issues.
Yeah.
So they would be my max out levels if you were really having to just throw everything in the kitchen sink at it.
I might go a little higher with the T3, but only for a short period of time. It's not something that I would ever suggest on a regular basis. Normally, you know, we try to go as long as we can without it, you know, and if we wanted to bring it in, I would bring it in at even low, like 15, 20, up to like 20 and at micrograms, and then see how that goes, and maybe like 25 micrograms, just something like that, and leave it at that for the remainder of the prep. And my thought had always been that it's kind of like, you know, as we diet, our thyroid production can go down. It's part of our body trying to, you know, preserve itself, really. You know, it doesn't want to get into shape. You know, our bodies want to hold where we're at. It feels like, who knows, there might be a famine or a drought coming up, or you might have some sickness. You need to have that body fat storage for times like that, your body thinks. So it doesn't want to let that stuff go, and it will fight you. And one of the ways it'll fight you is it'll literally reduce your thyroid output as you get more and more dieted. And part of that too is how you diet somebody. If you give them refeeds, that can help, you know, but you dig somebody into a hole anyway. And sometimes you have to push hard, especially in a contest prep. I would maybe build it up to 75 micrograms tops for a short, limited period of time. I can only think of one time that I've done that in the last 2 years out of everybody I've worked with. But I mean, for a limited period of time, for a month, say. And then from there we back it back down. And ideally, I'd want to be able to back it down before we got into the show too. So I might do that. What about cardio? What's the most you've ever had somebody on cardio?
Most I've probably had is an hour AM, an hour PM. But it was far from ideal. But it was the lesser of the evils percentage. You know, it was like, well, they're either going to come in fat or we have to go overboard and get them lean, but it's not going to be the best representation. And we discussed it and discussed looking for a later show, but they were fixed on what they wanted to do. So it's like, well, then we've got no choice. The only thing we can do is just push this and push it harder. It's not just that. I mean, obviously, cardio goes high, particularly if it's leg-based cardio, then you're going to start seeing flattening and things like that. But it's just physically them being able to do it. You know, it's 2 hours of cardio a day. It's a lot of bloody cardio.
Yeah, a lot of time.
Talking about cardio.
Yeah.
Completely unrelated, but I just remembered it, and I thought, you know what, I'll actually put this in. So, one of our clients, the guy called Matt Pitchforth.
Okay.
He is currently rowing across the Atlantic.
What?
It's a four-man team. He's not an athlete. He owns McDonald's franchises.
He what?
He owns McDonald's franchises.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Oh, and a year ago he decided he wanted this challenge. So there's 4 of them. If you download the YB Racers app and then you download the World's Toughest Row, you can actually track them. They're called Team Graft. And they row in a pair for 2 hours.
Okay.
Then they have 2 hours off.
Okay.
Then they row for another 2 hours, and then they have 2 hours off. They maintain that for 40 days.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I mean, like 1 day would be a lot of that for me, you know?
40 days, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. They have to eat, sleep, shit, do everything they need to do in that 2 hours, because 2 hours later, they're back in the seat and rowing again.
I assume they have some sort of like safety boat following them or something.
No. Not individually. Not individually, no.
Oh, so there's more than one crew of people doing this.
Oh, yeah, there's probably 30, 40 teams. There's some doubles, single crews.
Oh.
4-man, I think, is the most popular. They're lying second at the moment, but the leaders are quite a way out in front. I think they've done about 400 miles, and I think they've got about 2,300 miles still to go.
Holy crap. I wonder what the statistics are on that and how many people actually finish.
I think there'll be... There's one dropped out at the moment, but I suspect there'll be quite a few. That's just... talking about cardio.
Yeah, no kidding, man. 2 hours on, 2 hours off.
Non-stop.
Yeah, for 40 days.
Roughly, yeah. 35 to 40 days.
If they stay on track. Not to mention, man, I could only imagine what the open water waves are like.
Yeah, I mean, they travel at a good time to try and minimize, but obviously bad weather does happen still.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild, man. I got to look that up and find out more about it.
They just popped in my head because we were talking about cardio, and it's like, yeah, there you go. There's some cardio for you.
Yeah, no kidding, man.
12 hours a day, every day.
I would say I'm about the same as you, like 2 hours. I've also had people that are doing 2 hours, and then we've turned part of that into HIIT cardio.
Yeah, I like HIIT. I must admit, I do like using HIIT. I think if you stay with just LISS, he can actually start to get a bit stale and not as effective. And if you throw a bit of HIIT in there, it just freshens things up a little bit.
So I worked with a guy who competed this year. He might be listening to the show right now, and if he is, it's okay. Shame on you. We've talked about this, we've talked about this extensively, and all I can do is just laugh at this point. So we started working together, and he had a prescription for a GLP-1 drug. He had a prescription for glucophage, metformin, and he had a testosterone prescription. I was like, okay, well, you got it from a TRT clinic, I believe. They're prescribing GLP-1s. I always have in my questionnaire, is there anything else I should know about you? Like any health conditions, anything like that. Doesn't say anything. So, we're running the test, we're moving along, and I said, well, we could probably benefit from the GLP-1 and the glucophage based off of your blood sugar. And he said, oh, yeah, the doctor, really wanted me to take it. So based off of what we were seeing, this blood sugar, based off his prescription, I was like, let's just run it as prescribed, And down the road, we were running into issues. But it took me a little while to figure that out. It wasn't like instantaneous because he didn't tell me out the gate. It was like I had to research him and figure him out, get him to test his blood sugar. So, we're a week in or whatever, and then we start that. I find out more as I go, like, oh, well, my doctor has me do this. Oh, it turns out his doctor had him on T3 as well. I'm like, okay, so his thyroid. I'm telling him, like, man, there's something just wrong about the way your body works. And it's just something I said, out of everybody I've worked with, literally at this point, thousands of people, this is a very unique situation. I would love to get to the bottom of figuring out, like, why is it that your hypothalamus is not pumping out these signals? So, turns out, after the show, he tells me, oh yeah, I have a benign pituitary tumor. That is, this whole time, it's totally fine. I get it checked every several months by my doctor. But he was one of those guys. In order to get him in shape, the only person I could think of in current time, he had to do 2 hours of cardio.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's a big impact in the day when you add in training as well. You are starting to use, if someone's got a job,
yeah,
and they're doing 2 hours of cardio and they're training, you're starting to run out of day.
Yeah, and he had like 5 kids, and he had a full-time job, and they lived on a farm, so he had like dogs to take care of, and farm animal. Like, dude, it was a lot, man, but he managed it without complaining.
No, good on him.
All right, so what else do we have here? Zbol 50. You ever hear of that?
Never.
Yeah, enigmatic elixir known as Zbol 50, contained within a 1 milliamp. Huh. So I looked it up before we recorded, and where was this? It says Zbol 50 is nandrolone? It sounds like a brand name to me, doesn't it?
I've never heard of it, mate. Yeah, it does. It sounds like a lab name rather than anything. I mean, nandrolone's very often dosed at 50 milligrams pharmaceutically.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't surprise. It just doesn't sound like a pharma name, no, Zbol.
Yeah.
No, there's been weirder stuff, so it's not beyond the realms, but it sounds more like a UGL name.
We had another one. Somebody asked us about Nilevar. Can we tell them anything about Nilevar? And so I mentioned that to you before the show. You had said we had gotten this question before, hadn't we?
We had, not that long ago. I'm sure it's an oral nandrolone. I'm sure it is, but like I say, I might be wrong.
Yeah, it's a brand name, Nilevar, for northandrolone.
Right.
Yeah, which is northandrolone, what is it? 17A, 17 alkaloided, ethyl 19 nortestosterone. So yeah, like
effectively, yeah.
Yeah. I have never seen it in my life. What about this one?
What one?
Oh, Scott, can you ask Dave if IFBB Pro Ernie Taylor's triceps were filled with SEO or just site enhanced with a lot of gear? Thank you, bro.
So, there were loads of rumours about this at the time. And there was a bit of a fashion for SEO use at the time as well. So, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I believe Ernie's always denied it. I've never heard either way, but I don't really know anyone close to Ernie. Don't know Ernie, so I couldn't say. I've always found it curious. I mean, so the likes of Frex Wheeler used to use SEOs, and he was very careful about using it balanced throughout his whole body. I've never sort of understood the use of an SEO when you use it on one body part to the point where it makes it abnormal to the rest of the physique.
Yeah.
And Ernie wasn't a stupid man. I mean, he was a pro bodybuilder. He knew balance was important. So I find it difficult that he would have cited just his triceps to that extreme, because they were freakishly big. And I wonder if it was just like Phil Heath, never trained his arms 90% of the season, and he had massive arms. I just wonder if he was just one of those body parts that grew whatever. But I honestly don't know either way.
Yeah. What about this guy? There's somebody mentioned Josh Gold. Do you know him?
I don't. I know Full Bore Sports. I know they've got quite a decent sized stable, because Romana's with Full Bore Sports. She's in their stable. Okay. But I don't know him. Didn't he ask if he was... Isn't he going for pro or something?
Yeah, it says, Dave, are you aware of an up-and-coming bodybuilder trying to go pro named Josh Gold with Full Bore in the UK? Great guy and coach.
I know of his existence. I don't know him, though.
Okay.
And I don't know anything about him. And that's more me being ignorant than anything else.
Yeah. Dave's ignorant on a lot of stuff, guys.
I don't really follow it. It's, if I know somebody, I take an interest in them for obvious reasons. But beyond that, I don't really follow bodybuilding. So I don't know who's current. I know Jack Richardson got his pro card recently, and I've always liked Jack's physique. I think he's got a really nice physique, but other than that, unless there's somebody that I sort of have an interest in, I don't know what's going on in British bodybuilding at all.
See, what do you guys think of maltodextrin? Is it good for pre, intra, post workout? could possible blood glucose problems from it be solved with berberine?
I don't see why you would get blood glucose problems. I mean, it's a simple sugar, so obviously it's going to spike. But timing is sort of way, those timings are sort of where you'd want it anyway. And I don't see why you should end up with any BG issues off the back of it unless there's something actually wrong with the way your body deals with insulin and blood sugar. So yeah. I don't think berberine's a necessity for it. There's better fast-acting carbs, more refined fast-acting carbs, things like hardy branched, cyclostextrin, and stuff like that. But if it's all you can get, it's all you can get.
It used to be all you could get years ago before they had like Waxy Maze and stuff. It was dextrose or maltodextrin. It's cheap. There's that.
But yeah, there's nothing particularly wrong with it. There are better versions of that type of product available now.
And the more you try to use, the more its weakness shows. Like if you're using like 10, 15 grams, okay. But if you're trying to get 50 grams in, which I had done in the past, it starts taking a toll on your digestion. It doesn't digest as well as something like highly branched cyclic dextrin will. There's that.
Yeah. I've heard that before about gut issues off the back of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I found, too, that I would just stay full feeling versus if I used a higher quality carb, by the time I was done training, even though I had like maybe 100 grams of carbs intra-workout, I still would feel hungry after I was done, It was like full and bloated. And the whole thing with berberine, you're kind of like putting it in just to negate it. Do you know what I mean? Like, ideally, too, if you're using it around training, your body is a fantastic glucose disposal. Like, training is a glucose disposal agent.
Unless there's an underlying issue, you should have no issues or requirement for a GDA around training.
Yeah. How about Clint? He says, "Hey guys, I'm in my early 50s. I'm pushing the test to 1,000. Deca 400 weekly. Seeing great results after 5 weeks. Bloods are good as of 1 month ago, and will test again in 2 weeks. BP has never been better. Any thoughts on what to watch out for? So far, so good. Big fan of Think Big. Thanks."
Just the usual. Your estrogen management is going to be one thing. Blood pressure, blood thickness, lowering of HDL, just the usual stuff. There's nothing specific. Obviously, with a gamma test, estrogen is definitely going to be something you want to be looking at. And I mean, all things being equal, if your gear is correct, you will probably need some pretty heavy estrogen management for a gamma test.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly, right? Especially then with Deca, trying to keep those two things balanced, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't got estrogen issues at that dosing. But he may be taking estrogen management and just not stipulated it in the comment. But I would have expected estrogen issues at that dosing.
Yeah, especially 5 weeks in by now. Gamboni Law. Great show, guys. Any thoughts on cold plunges?
I believe they're good for managing inflammation, but then at the same time, inflammation post-workout is part of the growth process, so you've got to be a little bit careful. You don't want to get rid of all inflammation. It actually has a positive effect. A lot of people swear by them for mental health clarity. They seem to have peaked and settled. You see this all the time. There'll be something that gets fashionable, or gets a lot of exposure, and then it'll have this massive peak in use. So everybody was jumping in ice baths for a while, and then it sort of settles and calms down, and then the people that carry on are the people that feel a benefit from it. But there's a wide variety of people that have stated that they've had massive benefits through just general health and mental well-being through ice baths and cold sea dips in the morning and stuff like that. The Stoltmans do it. Quite a lot of the strongmen do, but I know a lot of people outside of the training circles that still believe in ice baths as being very good for mental clarity and that sort of thing. Never experienced it myself, so it's not something I've ever done long term or had any long term experience with. But there's a few people that I've met that have said it's okay, and then others that I've met that have absolutely sworn by it.
What would it take to get you to do a cold plunge? Would you ever try it?
I wouldn't mind doing one. The only thing I'd be a little bit wary of is how the heart would hold up to it.
Yeah, that's true. It might not be the wisest idea to start throwing Dave in an ice bath.
I've had ice baths. I've had cold plunges. I've been in light saunas and then done a cold plunge and stuff like that in the past.
Yeah,
but yeah, I didn't have particularly anything against them. I've always found saunas very fatiguing. Even short exposure to a sauna, I've always found uncomfortable and fatiguing. I've never been very good with high heat.
Yeah.
But I've had ice baths in the past and fine, but never done anything consistently to say whether it had a positive effect or not.
When you lived in Canada, did you ever swim in the Great Lakes? It's very cold.
I think I never went beyond paddling. I lived on the shores of Lake Erie.
Oh, okay.
I had my own beach. But I don't think I did anything above a paddle.
Okay. I'll tell you, man, Lake Superior is freaking cold. And when I was a kid, my dad and I used to scuba dive. I got him into that, and we would go, there's a lot of shipwrecks in Lake Superior. And we did a shipwreck that was by pictured rocks, and I remembered reading that at 90 feet of water, this wreck called the Smith Moore sat. And we went to go see it. The water temperature in that spot is 38 degrees at 90 feet year-round. Doesn't get warmer, doesn't get colder. Just sits at 38. Freaking cold, man.
It's about 4 degrees Celsius.
Is that what it? Yeah, just above freezing.
About 4, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we got this question twice. Once in the live stream and from somebody else on Patreon. Can you discuss Clen protocol for the last 2 weeks / peak week of a show? Up the dose? Cut it out? Or what's the move here?
I'd keep it in. I wouldn't necessarily up the dose. It would depend on where we are situation-wise. I'd definitely keep it in because it's going to have a diuretic effect and it's going to help with water. But normally, to be honest, generally just sustain it.
Yeah. Yeah, I always want it to have a good, strong effect, but I don't want it to be so strong that it's causing cramping. So we're real vigilant, especially like if we start Clen and you start telling me you're getting cramps, because I think talking to everybody else, I start lower than like Andrew Barry was saying he starts at 50 or 40, and I start at 20. And if you're telling me you're cramping at 20, and we're getting, like, we have to really kind of get your salt up, get some taurine in there, your hydration is good, I am already thinking to myself, like, okay, well, when we get to the show, we really need to watch that. I want some level of Clen in, but I don't think we need to increase the dose. In fact, I don't really see a problem with filling people out with Clen, like with T3. You know, it's not like it interferes, but I still am kind of mindful of that, you know?
Yeah, T3 can keep you flat, aldactone can keep you flat, but I've never found that with Clen. I've never had any issue loading anybody with Clen.
Me either. If you're taking Yohimbine, we talked about Yohimbine today, I would cut Yohimbine out a good week out from the show. It's said to make you hold water. And I've seen it with some people. I haven't seen it with others. But generally, we can tell. If we have you on a consistent plan, I've got you, you know, maybe we're going down 2 pounds per week, 2 pounds per week. Then we add Yohimbine in. You went down 2 pounds, and I say, okay, let's add Yohimbine this week. And then next week, the scale is the same. Then I'm pretty confident that you're holding a couple pounds of water from it. You know, if we've consistently demonstrated fat loss for a month or 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden the scale doesn't move, and we added Yohimbine, you're probably holding a little bit of water from it. So just to be safe, I usually always take it out around a week out. So what else we have here, Dave? Got a lot of people commenting in the stream. Best blood pressure regulator.
Oh, is it medicational wise?
I think medication, supplement.
The non-popular answer, cardio.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of blood meds. So I don't like using blood pressure medication. I'm quite happy to use stuff like Reds and Greens, Strom Systol Max, or any of those supplement products that help with blood pressure. But I'm a bit reluctant to go down the medication route because I sort of feel if you're having to medicate blood pressure through a blood pressure medication, then I would start to be saying, right, let's review everything because something isn't quite working right for us. Is it a diet issue? Is it an estrogen management issue? Is it just the fact that you're not doing any cardio? So I would look at all those measures before I would finally resign to adding in a BP med.
Yeah.
But there are some people that doesn't matter what you do, they struggle with BP. And some of that can be genetic predispositions and stuff, and so they end up having to be necessary, but it's always a last resort moving to the medications for me.
I would say, Dave, that I would in part credit you for my decision to have guys in the off-season doing more intense cardio. It has been in part, it was something I had come to in part on my own, but hearing you talk about it has really solidified that idea for me, and I do see really good results with it, keeping somebody healthier, keeping them athletic, keeping the bloat down, adding in even 1 or 2 sessions of very, very intense cardio in the off season.
Yeah, I've got a client at the moment. The first setup we did, we had problems with blood pressure, so when we came off cycle, I made him introduce it, and we kept it in, and then we moved into the second cycle with the hit in, and we've had a little bit of an increase in blood pressure, but nothing that we need to be concerned about, well within decent parameters, and no issues whatsoever, and there's no medication. It is purely that introducing in the off-season of HIIT cardio to keep him fit and healthy, and we've carried it through into the cycle. And the blood pressure management just isn't a concern now. You know what I mean? It's just something we don't need to bother about. We still check it and keep an eye on it, but I think he's 6 weeks in, and we're still sitting really, really nice.
Yeah. I've had a number of people I've worked with who are like, oh, I have this blood pressure med, and then we find out they don't need it once we get them on a good diet, where they're not holding as much water now.
Yeah, I mean, you'll always get people that are genetically predisposed to high blood pressure. There's going to be those sort of people, but a lot of people, it is lifestyle factors. It is what they're doing that they're just not managing it as efficiently as you could do.
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you on that. If you can only train in the morning and you're prepping, would you rather train fasted with Yohimbine, train after breakfast with Yohimbine, or skip the Yohimbine?
I would train fasted.
I like to train with food. I have a few people who train fasted and then they eat their meal one. But I like to train with food in the system.
In prep?
Yeah, always.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
it's not
would train fasted in prep.
Yeah, it's not 100% necessary, but I'd prefer to. And then I'm not looking to lose fat during the resistance training. With my brain, I'm thinking I'm using the training to be as absolutely strong as possible, to retain as much muscle as possible while dieting. That's my mindset.
I don't disagree with that. I suppose one thing that plays in here, which is probably a bigger factor, is whether they're assisted or natural.
Yeah,
I find fasted training in prep, if that's when they have to train, is much more beneficial to naturals due to the natural GH spike you get off it.
Oh, okay.
Where it's not so much of an issue with assisted because obviously the drugs are in there.
You feel like that natural GH spike is that big of a deal? Or just like the whole cumulative effect of
Yeah, I think it's just a case of it's lots of different things that add up. I mean, Cybergenics built the backbone of their fucking training program on that natural GH spike. Do you remember that?
I remember Cybergenics. I never did it.
I used to sit outside the supplement shop looking at that box, drooling, thinking that if I could afford to save up enough, I never could. If I could afford to save up enough money to buy that box, that I'd be the next pro. That's how much faith I had in that product. I thought that product was going to make me a monster, and I never ever managed to be able to afford it.
Me either. But you saw the proof, right? You saw the before and after pictures posted in every magazine.
I used to look at those ads and look at those pictures because I remember there was a pro that used it for a while.
Yeah.
And I used to look at those pictures, and I was convinced that was going to transform me if I could ever get to the point where I could afford it.
It was great marketing. Yeah, somebody said about Tbol, massively underrated oral. I actually used it on a cut with tested mass and had a fantastic look. And then Cornelia said, listening now because I find curious because I find that Tbol is highly underrated. 10 milligrams prior to training can provide some really special energy, in my opinion.
Let's start a new movement, the Tbol movement.
The Tbol movement? All right.
Well, we've had the Primo, haven't we? So we need a new trend. So let's just start Tbol.
Yeah. We had the trend movement. That was a trend, right?
Yeah, it was.
High trend, low trend, with the Primo and Mast. Now it's time for something new. Everybody's got to use Tbol.
Yep.
All right. Question for the next episode. What would be, and we've talked about this before, Dave, but he didn't hear any of those episodes, I guess. I think you've probably said it about five times now. What would be the dosing and preload time for P5P?
I like to run a week to 2 weeks, and I would say between 400 and 500 milligrams a day.
Okay.
But I do highly recommend a pre-dosing. I see a lot of people running 100 or 150 and 200, and on a non-assisted individual for some mental clarity support, that sort of thing, yeah. On an assisted individual, yeah. But I think prolactin is very misunderstood.
Okay.
In a sense that I see a lot of people, they'll look at bloods, and it's very, very common when someone's on anabolic to see prolactin high 300s, low 400s, which is above range. And they automatically assume that they have a prolactin issue. The fact of just using anabolics creates enough stress and inflammation in the body to cause prolactin to rise.
Okay.
And that prolactin is not going to impact you in any significant way whatsoever. It's not going to create libido issues. It's not going to cause any problems. And to be fair, I'd just leave it well be. Estrogen being above range is going to increase prolactin. And again, it's not particularly impacting. You're going to get more impacting from the estrogen. The only time where prolactin really becomes a pain is when you have an androlone in play. That dopamine suppression really makes prolactin very impacting. So a lot of people panic around prolactin. They do bloods. They'll be like, oh, my prolactin's a little better. If you want to run some P5P, fine. It's not going to do you any harm, but it's not really something you need to be worried about.
Yeah, I'm working with a guy right now who has pretty high prolactin and high in what was it? Yeah, the prolactin was the general thing that was high, and we started P5P at 200 milligrams, went to 300 milligrams, and it cut the prolactin in half.
Yeah, it's very effective on prolactin that's generated through non-nandrolone driven sources.
Yeah, which this is the case. He was just running like a high TRT, and he's always struggled with it, even when he was natural. So we were thinking he may have an actual issue because it's something that's gone on long term.
That's not normal, and that does need dealing with or looking at, and that's potentially going to be either a high stress environment or you're borderline on prolactinemia or prolactinemia. Can't say it.
There's also, so I did a little bit of research on this. He was in like the 400s just naturally. Always has this high prolactin, and you can develop a cyst on your pituitary that increases the output. The only way to know is first getting the reading, and then second doing an MRI on the pituitary, and it can be completely harmless. It's not an issue, and by controlling that prolactin, like you're talking about with P5P, it will over time that cyst may dissolve itself when you're not stressing, when you're not like forcing stressing, and it has a chance to take a break. I guess the pituitary gets a chance to take a break from the high production. So his doctor's looking into that now. And I found that interesting. It was cool to see, man, because I saw his numbers. He was at like 300 and something. What was it? 300, 400. And
was he experiencing any symptoms?
Yes.
Okay, and so what symptoms was he experiencing?
I believe he was dealing with libido issues, and I think he was getting like the gyno-type issues too. Even when his estrogen was in range, he was experiencing some sensitivity and stuff. Or even when his estrogen shouldn't have shown that. But it was interesting to actually see that direct relationship, though, of starting the P5P, testing again, and seeing it cut from like the 300 down to like 150.
You can have it too low as well, just bear that in mind.
Yeah. 150 was still like the top end of your range, right?
No, I think our range, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure our range.
I think the range I was looking at, it was like 150 was the high end and 300 was double.
Prolactin upper limit is 324 in UK. But that's MUL.
Okay.
So it depends on what you're measuring in at the end of the day. So yeah, so those numbers I were quoting was based on UK ranges, by the way, not. So it might be different for our American viewers.
How about this one? I don't know if you've ever seen this video. We've done a reaction to it. Tom Platz training David Hoffman. Well, you know Tom Platz is training. David Hoffman is a German bodybuilder, really good guy. I think he was a classic. I think he did classic pro, looked really good. But Tom utterly, as you can imagine, freaking destroyed him. You know, they did squats until he couldn't even squat the bar, basically. And then they did leg extensions, and that was it. So here's the question. Question about the leg training. I've been watching a famous Tom Platz video with David Hoffman, where Tom is making David go to complete failure and then some. I absolutely love it. How would you incorporate it into a lifting regimen? Like a single squat day just for this, and then another leg day for hams, calves, etc.?
I've always been a fan of splitting quads, hams, and calves up for the simple reason that if you're training quads effectively, you're going to struggle to do the other two effectively. From an intensity and endurance point of view. Tom is unique. He's probably one of the hardest training individuals that there ever has been. I mean, he really did go above and beyond with stuff.
Okay.
I would probably suggest that maybe for some people that level of intensity is not going to be repeatable on a regular basis. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive to be more intense in your training. Very few people have I met that train too hard. So, you know, I do think most people can increase their intensity and get more out of their training. And that's definitely something you can take out of Tom's book in the way he approaches it, because Tom as well is very surprisingly artistic in the way he thinks about training. It's a very emotional thing. It's a very visual thing with him. But yeah, I mean, I've always split legs anyway, so I would recommend that off the bat. But it's not something you're going to just suddenly start doing. You're not going to go from training, let's say we had an intensity scale, you're training at level 3, you're not suddenly going to walk in and train at Tom's level 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's something you're going to have to learn to do and build up to. It's going to take time. And you will gradually increase your intensity week on week, month on month. And the only time you sort of really realise this, I suppose, is when you train with someone who you haven't trained with for a while. Because they may have trained with you, say, 3 months ago and kept up and had an enjoyable workout. They come back with you 3 months later and your intensity has been increasing week on week. and now you're second exercise in, and they're dead, they're done, and they just cannot maintain. And that's when you start to realise, oh, my training has improved. It has got more intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you can I don't think you can train too intensely. I do think you can train too long.
Yeah.
Because I think by the nature of intensity, that when you train intensely, that ends the workout in its own right. For argument's sake, like you said, David Hoffman couldn't squat an empty bar. Well, then he's not squatting. He's done, isn't he? He can't do any more. He's actually got to the point where he can't do any more.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom was so intense with his training, and I get it, and it worked for him. I do think, now, okay, one point is, I remember he said in that video, because I've watched it a few times, he said, when I was at my best, I was training legs, I was squatting, like once every 2 or 3 weeks. So that gives you an answer right there, too. He wasn't doing that back to back to back all the time, you know?
Yeah, I don't think... I think the number of people that can train at that intensely, not from a physical, just from a mental aspect, is going to be rare. But that doesn't mean people can't step up from where they are. And I do think that you should always be striving to get your intensity up. But the more intensely you train, the less you need to train.
Yeah, and I wonder, some of that stuff I think is more like building a fortitude than like the Widowmaker sets. You know, I think some of that stuff is more fortitude than it is actual like building of the muscle. I think that some of that stuff with that leg training, like that particular video, that David could have probably stopped shy of how far, like he went to hard failure, and then Tom was like 5 more, and you know, assisted and peel a plate, and I think that he could have stopped shy of that and probably gotten the trigger he needed for growth, and still had more recovery resources left. There comes a point where you start digging into your resources too much, where you know, like you said, you can only do it once every couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So, I mean,
at the same time, it wouldn't have made a good video.
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge factor, right? We wouldn't be talking about it.
Exactly. So that it has to be extreme to be entertaining.
Somebody threw in Thomas Artin for BP management. You just got to throw that in, Dave.
Yeah, I say I don't have an issue. I would leave the medications as the last resort.
Yeah, me too. All right. What else do we have here? Somebody, the guy who mentioned Josh Gold, he said, Josh said, I get on well with Dave. He probably took the piss out of me, as he always does with people. He coached my best mate for years.
Maybe I need to have a look at a picture, because I'm not recognizing the name to a person. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, Ginger Training.
You know him as Ginger Training, huh?
Oh, is it just a Ginger Tosspot? I didn't know that was his real name. Strong little fucker, actually. Yeah, his physique, actually, over the last sort of 12, 18 months has really gone on.
Yeah?
Sorry, I apologise. Yes, I do know who it is. I thought he was with Strom. I didn't think he was with Full Bore.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, he's, you know Charlie, don't you?
Charlie, what's his last name? Oh, wait. Yeah, I know Charlie. Yeah.
Charlie, yeah.
Yeah.
Mass Monster. So he's mates with Charlie. He's from down that neck of the woods.
Yeah.
He's solid, he's Ginger, yeah. Still a ginger prick, but he's solid.
That's the Dave I know. All right. Winstrel question. Best practices to take divided doses throughout the day or 50 milligrams pre-workout?
I'm a one-hit man. Do what you want, but I'm a one-hit man. I believe in single dosing when it comes to orals.
I don't think it's a huge difference with Winstrel. You know, it's got a longer half-life for an oral, 9, 12, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's 9, I think, yeah.
So you're going to get it in your system. I'm okay, though, with splitting it. But let's say you came to me and you're like, listen, I only have capsules. They're 50 milligrams a cap. Then say just take it all at once. Like, I'm kind of indifferent, you know. If you had 25 milligram tabs, then I'd say, well, take one morning and one evening, 8 hours later or something. But I don't think that either way, Dave, we would have people that had higher or lower side effects or better or worse results, regardless. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's going to be significant, but I am a proponent of the single dosing.
All right. There's that Nilevar question we had. And he asked, why hasn't a UGL brought Nilevar back?
Why would they?
When there's like 100 other things that we know work really well, right?
Yeah.
Why not do a Tbol and Anavar stack?
If you want.
Yeah, why not? I'd take half as much each, personally,
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I've seen plenty of labs do blended orals before now, so...
Yeah. I've seen them prescription, Anavar and Winstrol, 25 and 25. And that might be because they weren't allowed, or it maybe wasn't good practice to prescribe 50 Anavar in the U.S. or something. Did that Clen question, and we did the amino question with Yohimbine. Dave, do you have any Uncle Dave's advice for us?
I do.
Oh my God, Dave's actually prepared today.
I do, but I think I've sort of touched on it before, so you will tell me if I have, no doubt. People usually do. Dealing with conflict.
Okay.
I think it's a thing that a lot of people often, I wouldn't say get wrong, I think get wrong is the wrong terminology, but struggle around how they should manage conflict. People sometimes feel that they shouldn't react, when it's sometimes actually reacting to a negative, someone's done something negative to you or acted in a negative way, actually can deal with the situation there and then very instantaneously. I think, however, that the important factor around reacting is that you must always be in control of how you react. Particularly in this day and age, in a video day and age of things, you don't want things getting out of hand, but turning around to someone immediately and going, that's wrong, I don't like that, that's out of order, you shouldn't be doing that, I'm not comfortable or happy with that, can very much end and revolve a situation immediately. If you don't react, then I think a reaction at a later date is wrong. It's not going to serve a purpose. So if someone you have a casual friendship with says something that offends you, does something that offends you, and you don't react to it at the point, one, because maybe you feel it's inappropriate, or you didn't really fully comprehend what they said, and then you've gone away and thought about it, and you've gone, no, actually, that's pissed me off.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a twatty thing to say. I don't think you can then ring them up and go and see them and go, look, you fucker, blah, blah, blah. That point, then, it needs to be explained in a cool point manner. The reactionary only works at the point of event. Otherwise, then it needs to be explained in a manner of, look, I didn't like it when you said that. I found it offensive. These are the reasons why. I'd appreciate if you didn't do that again. Job done. What I think a lot of people do is they go away, they mull over the situation, and by the time they've finished, they've created this big, massive issue that doesn't actually exist. And potentially the person initially, it was a bit of a throwaway comment, or they just weren't quite wording it properly, or they weren't thinking properly. But the thing is, not only has that comment impacted you, which is fine, fair enough. We're all entitled to be offended, we're all entitled to be insulted, it's part of life. You've created a problem for yourself now, because you've effectively punished yourself for a period of time because you've gone over it and over it and over it in your head.
Right.
So you either react there and then, or you deal with it in a timely manner, but what you don't do is stew on it, because that's not helping you. In fact, that throwaway comment or that throwaway action from somebody that wasn't really meant to cause any offence, you've now ended up stressing yourself weeks, possibly even months over it. And if you don't like someone, and I had this conversation with you about an individual before the show, there's nothing wrong, rude, or out of order by saying, look, I'm sorry, I find we clash. so I'd rather not be around because I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable and I don't want to feel uncomfortable, so I'm just going to over here. Which is much more sense than grinning and bearing it and then winding yourself. I mean, it's like there's certain members of my family I don't see. It's not because I dislike them, it's not because I have an issue with them, it's because I find their interaction painful. So it's like, sorry, but I'm not winding myself up for 3-4 days before I meet you for something that's going to bring me no pleasure, it's going to bring you no pleasure, and it's a completely pointless exercise. So, respectfully, your family, you will never not be family, but let's just agree to stay apart.
Yeah.
And I think I think a lot of the time we end up punishing ourselves over situations because we just overthink them. If someone doesn't act the way you'd like them to act around you, you have pretty much 2 choices. Tell them and see if they change.
Yeah.
Or walk away.
Yeah, okay.
You don't have to fall out with somebody. You don't have to have a fallout. You don't have to hate them. And in fact, hating them is a very negative attitude that's going to do you far more pain. If you hate someone, who hurts?
Yeah, you're investing all that energy then, right?
You hurt, not them. They're going about their business and their life. They have no idea, and they're not concerned. So if you hate someone, it hurts you. It doesn't hurt them. So if you've got people in your life that you or someone who is a friend or you thought was a friend did you a wrong, just step away. Just step back. You don't have to fall out of them. You can still be pleasant. You can still be polite. You just don't invest in them anymore.
Yeah.
You don't give them time that's valuable to you if you know it's not going to come with the result that you want from it. So you just don't do it.
You can tell people too, though, like, hey, that really hurt my feelings when you said this thing, or that was upsetting. And you can see, because like if somebody's your friend and they want to stay your friend, they might be able to recognize, like, oh, you know what? I did make a mistake there, and I'm really sorry about that.
It might be a conversation. They might be, oh, come on, you're being a bit of a snowflake here. It was this, and this. Why are you taking it to heart? And they might have a genuine point, but you open a conversation to discuss about that situation that you were uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
But if you tell them, and they're like, fuck off, you prick, I'm not interested. Well, then it's like, why waste any more time on that individual? Because they've not got your interests at heart. So just... fine, okay, no problem, mate. In fact, it's like, thank you. You've saved me a lot of wasted time and a lot of wasted effort in a relationship with you that's never, ever going to be fulfilling.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't have expectations of somebody to be something they're not.
No. And I've said this in the past, expect people to be who they are.
Yeah.
But you've got to learn the art of reading who they are. Whereas what we do a lot of the time is we expect people to act the way we want them to act.
Yeah.
Or the way we act. And the other thing is you don't give with an expected return. Give freely or don't give at all. And if you're going to give with an expected return, then make it very clear to the person you're giving to, I expect this back in some way.
Yeah. Now we're treading into one you've done before, but you were good up until that, Dave. That was very clear and new, and it was Uncle Dave's wisdom. But now we're starting to blend it into other Uncle Dave's wisdom.
Right. So, Uncle Dave needs a piss. So
I have to pee so bad. I drink all this water since we've been recording, man. I've been holding it since we started. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Dave, do we want to take next week off? We're right before Christmas.
I think people are. It's Christmas Eve. I think it's going to be difficult.
All right, that sounds good to me. Guys, we'll be back in a couple. Well, when we are, we'll see you soon because I'm not sure exactly when this one will come out. Then we will wait to put this out till after Christmas, something like that. Either way, guys, we will be back. Load us up with questions for the next show. Go to evalbloodanalysis.com. Get your lab work done after Christmas by Dave. And, of course, go to Strom Sports Nutrition. You can go to truenutrition.com, use our code THINK, and supplementsource.ca. Guys, over at Patreon, load us up with questions. I've got a new Cuba episode out there now. If it's Patreon only at this point, but it will be released soon. Guys, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Dave.